It's a pleasure to welcome you to this YouTube program today, Walking with God in the Garden. I'm Richard Halls. I'm the pastor of this YouTube program, and I find it most challenging, especially as I share a few thoughts about gardening with you. I always like to do that before the actual discourse that I'm sharing from the Bible. Gardening is a fascinating business. It's a hobby, but it's more than that. It's serious because when we plant something, we want to see the results, the benefits of that particular seed that we plant, or maybe even the plant itself. I've learned one thing about gardening, and that is it takes a lot of attention. We must look upon it with a great deal of seriousness if we expect to see positive results. But before we get into that today, I want to share with you, if you're having difficulty in reaching me here on this YouTube program, that you subscribe to this program with these words at Richard Halls 1449. I hope that you tell other people about this program as well. I was quite amazed the other day when I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in another city. And he is finding a hard time to getting a church that he really likes. So I asked him if he ever subscribed to the YouTube program, Walking with God in the Garden. And he said, yes, I do. I watch you often. So then, of course, I always ask for advice and also some critiquing as to how I can make it better and improve upon it. Well, he was complimentary, as so many people are. But I do want to invite you to share thoughts in terms of what I'm saying and how I say it, and even the content. Getting back to gardening. What is so important about gardening? I had a dear friend who wanted to be a gardener. So she went out and she bought all of the seed packets with all the beautiful description of the plants on the front of the seed packet. Maybe you've done this. You've gone to the store, maybe it's an agricultural store, or even sometimes you can get them in grocery stores. Seed packets, carrots, radishes, beets, watermelon, all of the different plants that you want. Well, this lady was serious about wanting a great garden. But every time I went to see her and visit, I wanted to check out the garden. And she'll always complain about the fact that for some reason, things didn't turn out the way that she expected. Well, let me tell you what was happening. First of all, there were weeds everywhere. Secondly, she did not plant according to the directions, which leads me to a conclusion about life. You ever encounter people who wonder what's wrong with their lives? Things don't seem to be going well. They're not happy. Their lives are not productive. It's what we would call being messed up. But then, upon close examination, we oftentimes find the reasons why things are not so good. Maybe physically, they don't exercise. Maybe they eat the wrong foods. Sometimes people just don't have good relationships. So they are not friendly. They're not cordial. They're not hospitable. So the results oftentimes follow the behavior. Gardening is no different. If you want a good garden, you follow the directions. Right now is a good time to get started in what we call spring gardening. You have to prepare the soil. You have to learn about the quality of the soil. What does the soil need? You can get test kits. And then the crops. Do you plant crops that are not acclimated to this particular area, but maybe another area. I spent a lot of time doing research in terms of what produces the best in this area. So it's a basic law of life. To do the right thing to get the right results. If you learn nothing else today, here on this YouTube program, it is this simple formula. To do the right thing to get the right results. That would be true of gardening, and it's true of life. It's true of relationships as well. I want to share with you today a tragic story, a story that we're living with even today on the part of the Israelis. The Bible spends a lot of time describing the development of the Jew. First of all, they were called Hebrews under the time of Abraham. Then they were called Israelites under the time of Jacob. And later in the history of these people, they became known as Jews. The reason they are called Jews is because they follow the tribe of Judah. The people today, oftentimes neighbors and friends, are called Jews. So why is that way? I share with you today a passage which is found in that book which we've been studying together. And it is the book of 2 Kings. The great tragedy that occurred on the part of these people happened in the year 586 BC. We call it the destruction of the temple. And that later happened under the Romans in 70 AD. So we might wonder, why is it that the Jews seem to have so many problems? I am not a critique on the life of the Jew. I want to read, though, from the scripture. And here's what the scripture says. In 2 Kings chapter 24, we read these words, verse 19. The king did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as his predecessor did. It was because of the Lord's anger that all this happened to Jerusalem and Judah. And in the end, God thrusts them from his presence. And the sad words are these. When Nebuchadnezzar invaded Jerusalem in 586, we read, so Judah went into captivity away from her land. In many ways, the Jews today are returning to the land of Judah. It's not called Israel, but they're returning from places that they were dispersed centuries ago. Finally, there's a recreation of a state, 1948. So in a way, they are coming back. But when we read these verses in the Bible, they tell us why what happened, happened. They did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he dismissed them from his presence. What I want to share with you today is the need to keep in line with God, to study his word, to follow his path, to seek his will in your life. I'm firmly convinced, even though everything doesn't always turn out right, we sometimes ask the question, why do bad things happen to good people? But overall, if you follow what God outlines in his word, you study this word, you seek to do the best you can in the light of what you understand the Bible is saying, I believe that you will find the presence of the Lord. I believe that you will be blessed by God as well. And you will not fall prey to what we find here, the separation of God from your life. May God give you that peace today as you have learned from these words, which are found in the scripture, as to why so many problems occurred on the part of the Jewish people at this particular time in their history. God bless you, and please dial in again next week when we can share with each other.